All right, guys, those Rolling Stones here on You Like It to Later, Q94.7, as we are right here live on downtown Graham, Texas. And we've got some insurance things to discuss with Sonia from Bryant Insurance. And today, well, a very timely topic because a lot of people are getting ready to gear up and take those vacations.
Yeah, I had somebody ask me a question this last week that I thought would be good for us to talk about here. And that is, they're getting ready to go on vacation this summer on a cruise, and the cruise ship is going to visit some foreign countries. And is there any kind of special insurance that they need to cover property and liability? So I thought that'd be a good thing for us to talk about today, because vacation time is a good time to check up on your insurance and make sure that you have everything you need or everything that you think you have.
The thing about going out of town, leaving your home, lots of things could take place, and you got to be prepared.
Right, and then when you add a foreign country into the mix, then that changes some things with your insurance as well. And a cruise ship is a really good example because people that otherwise would probably not travel to a foreign country might get off the ship for a day at a foreign country, and so there's some stuff to talk about. And just like most things, it's not an easy yes or no answer to the question, and it depends on what they're going to do. And there's not just one policy to cover these things. So the first thing is your automobile insurance. Your typical auto policy will cover auto accidents in the United States, territory of possession, Puerto Rico, and Canada. Then again, that's a typical policy. You need to talk to your agent about yours in particular. But when you go to another country, your policy is more than likely not going to provide coverage. So if you decide to go to the Bahamas and rent a car for the day, your personal auto policy is not going to cover you if there's an accident. And I think the last thing that anybody would want to have happen is if they're in a foreign country and have had an accident.
Especially in a place like the Bahamas, Mexico, where the traffic is not the most fun thing to be dealing with.
Right. So my first piece of advice is really think hard. Do you really want to rent that car?
Public transportation.
Right. But if you do rent a car, you will need to purchase liability insurance in that country. And so that's just something to be very thoughtful of. Again, it's maybe something you don't want to do is rent a car in a foreign country unless you're going to be there for several days and you've looked into it, checked into the laws of that country, and make sure that you can buy liability insurance in that country. So that's the first one. And then the thing that's a little more common is people will rent a jet ski for the day, or, those, now I can't think what they're called. They stand up and I don't know. They're always trying to...
Like a boat or something?
No, when they say, it doesn't matter, I'll think of it later, where it's on the land, but you stand up on it and it...
Oh, a Segway.
A Segway, thank you. And,
I was thinking water. I didn't...
I know, I'm sorry, I switched topics, but that's another thing where your homeowner's policy probably does provide liability coverage anywhere that in the world for you. Probably you need to talk to your agent to make sure. However, there's exclusions on there for recreational vehicles, watercraft. So another thing that you need to do is consider your liability exposure. I don't know how much you could hurt somebody with a Segway, but still, you never know. So, and same thing with the watercraft. You need to ask those questions when you're renting them. Does this have coverage, liability coverage? Can I buy that or not? And then something that we take with us everywhere is our personal property, whether it's our clothes, jewelry, all kinds of possessions that we take with us when we travel. And again, your homeowner's policy probably provides coverage anywhere in the world that you take your items. However, there's limited coverage on how much if it's not at where you are, and like we've talked about before, jewelry, that kind of thing. So a really good rule of thumb is don't take super valuable items with you on vacation. If you do, make sure that there's a safe in your room that you can lock them up in. Be really careful in those when you take your things, because you're going to have very limited coverage. And again, the liability that we talked about, it's probably going to cover most of the things that you would do, your homeowner's liability, but you do need to check with your agent and see what limitations there are. And then the last thing is that trip that you've spent so much money on. You really need to consider buying trip insurance. I always tell the story of the time that we paid for a big trip to Disney World, and our son stomped on the red ant bed and got his, at daycare when he was little, and got bites on his foot and ended up in the hospital, and we almost didn't get to go on our trip. And we were really glad we had purchased trip insurance, which if something happens and you can't go, and there's some other coverages in those policies that will provide you know, to if you have to have a penalty because you have to cancel, that kind of thing. So trip insurance is another thing you should talk to your agent about.
Well, if folks need to get a hold of you guys and talk to y'all and ask you any questions about any kind of the insurance you're talking about today, trip insurance, vacation insurance, things like that, or even if you rent out your home for vacations and things. I mean, there's all kinds of questions out there. How do they get a hold of y'all?
Well, call us at 549-2525 or come see us on the second floor of Sierra Bank in downtown Graham, or visit us on the web, www.brianins.com.
We have more coming up. I want to thank Sonia for coming by and talking some insurance stuff with us with Brian Insurance Agency. Stay tuned. Westwood One News on the way, and the 8 o'clock hour